There's only one place open, 24/7 near where I live at Quick Check, off the highway, 20 minutes away if I'm speeding. For anyone who doesn't live in the middle of nowhere, that's basically next door. I worked graveyard security at an abandoned warehouse complex, slated for demolition. So I spent most nights alone, surviving on bad coffee, worse sandwiches, and the faint comfort of fluorescent light at 4 amperes. My route was always the same, 20 miles of pitch black asphalt through dense, silent woods. I-70 West, a ribbon of darkness that felt like it belonged to me and me alone. It was late October, cold enough that the air bit at my skin. I left the Quick Check around 3, 20 amperes, and with my usual supplies. The road was empty, the world silent except for my tires and the low hum of static from a distant radio. Then something shifted, not a sound or a flash, just the slow crawl of wrongness. Headlights appeared behind me, growing fast. A beat-up dark sedan, maybe a mid-90 seconds. Buick blew past, doing 90. I barely noticed until I saw something inside it. Someone was standing in the back seat. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a coat, maybe, or a pile of junk. But the shape was too clean, too vertical. A human figure, perfectly straight, head almost touching the roof. I sped up, curiosity pushing me forward until I could see clearly. It wasn't a coat rack. It was a person standing, rigid, unmoving. The realization jolted me so hard I nearly swerved. No one could stand like that in a moving car. It was physically impossible. My brain scrambled for logic. Maybe a mannequin, maybe some Halloween prank. But every instinct told me it wasn't. I called my girlfriend Sarah. She was half asleep, unimpressed by my panic. "You've been up too long," she said. "It's a coat or a prop. You've watched too many Mr. Nightmare videos before work." She laughed, but I couldn't. Because ahead of me, that sedan was slowing down. Gradually, matching my speed, holding me in perfect distance, close enough to see it, too far to pass. Then, the thing in the back seat moved. Not a twitch, a full, deliberate turn. The whole torso rotated, stiff as wood, until it was facing backward, staring straight through the rear window at me. "Sarah," I whispered, gripping the wheel until my hands went numb. "It's looking at me." Through the tinted glass, I could only see the shape of its head long, slightly misshapen. Then my headlights caught a flash of pale white, a mask. Smooth, dull, featureless ceramic, or something like it. The driver sped up just enough to keep me trapped 30 feet behind. The figure remained still, its face locked on me. The air in my car felt thin. I was prey, caught in someone's private show. Then, the figure's arm lifted. Slowly, mechanically. The hand pressed flat against the rear glass, long fingers splayed wide. Too long, too thin. "It's raising its hand," I gasped. The sedan slammed on its brakes. Red taillights exploded in front of me. I hit mine hard, tires screaming, swerving onto the shoulder. Gravel spat under my car. I barely avoided a crash. The Buick shot forward again, vanishing into the darkness. Just before it disappeared, I saw one last detail. The figure's hand was still pressed against the window, waving slow and deliberate goodbye. I sat shaking on the roadside, heart hammering, the world silent again. Sarah's voice was distant on the phone. "Drive home," she said. "Don't stop." I wanted to believe it was fatigue, an illusion, anything but what I saw. But the image of that raised hand burned behind my eyelids all the way home. I told myself I wouldn't take I-70 West again. But the next night, I did. I hadn't slept. My brain wouldn't let go of the image, the mask, the movement, the hand. Sarah told me I was being ridiculous, that someone was just messing with me. Maybe they were, but they'd succeeded. I had to know if they were real. So I drove that same road again, leaving for work at 11 p.m. Every passing headlight made my stomach twist. The woods pressed close, black and endless. My shift dragged on, and when I finally clocked out at 3:15 amperes. The dread of the return trip was suffocating. 5 minutes onto I-70 West, headlights flared behind me, moving fast. Too fast. The same kind of sedan. I pressed the gas. 80, 90. The car behind me matched it. My pulse roared in my ears. Then it drew alongside, and there was no denying it. Same old, dented Buick. The driver's face was hidden under a hat or hood. But in the back seat, it was there again. The rider, standing tall, perfectly straight, head brushing the ceiling. I was closer this time, close enough to see that what I thought was a mask wasn't plastic at all. It was bandages. Thick, grimy white gauze wrapped around the entire head. No eyes, no mouth, nothing but stained cloth and dark patches where something had seeped through. The body was heavy, human, dressed in a dark jumpsuit. Its hands hung by its sides, fingers disturbingly long, knotted like branches. The driver turned slightly toward me, just enough that the passing glow of a streetlight revealed a faint smirk. He wasn't scared. He was enjoying this. And then the rider leaned. Without bending, without moving its legs, the figure tilted toward me. The motion was smooth, impossible, like it was trying to break through the window to get closer. My stomach dropped. I slammed the brakes, veered right. The Buick surged ahead, its bandaged passenger swaying like a stiff pole in a gust of wind. When the car finally disappeared ahead, I slowed to 50, shaking violently. My breathing sounded foreign, shallow, ragged. But the terror wasn't done. A mile ahead, the Buick's taillights flared, then went dark. It stopped dead center in the lane. It didn't pull over, it just waited. My mind screamed not to stop. My headlights carved a pale tunnel through the black, illuminating the motionless car. Nothing moved inside. They wanted me to pull over, to play along. Not happening. I jerked the wheel left, crossed the center line, and flew past. I couldn't resist one look inside. The back seat was empty. No rider, no bandages, nothing. And in that split second, dread crawled up my spine. Maybe it wasn't standing before. Maybe it was sitting, waiting for me to come close. As I passed the driver's side, I saw the man clearly for the first time. A dark hat, a cloth mask pulled high. His posture was perfect, rigid, motionless, mimicking the rider exactly. Then something moved in the front passenger seat. A shape rose, human-sized, but wrong. It was a mannequin, wrapped in the same filthy gauze, its head tilted forward as if staring out the windshield, giving the illusion of a person standing behind the driver. The rider had never been in the back seat at all. The real man was in front. The mannequin was the trick. But one question tore through my mind as I sped past. If the rider was fake, who turned its head that first night? Who raised its arm? I never slowed down. My foot stayed glued to the gas pedal until my house appeared out of the darkness like a lighthouse in a storm. I stumbled inside, shaking, barely able to speak. Sarah was waiting, worried. I told her everything, the car, the mannequin, the bandages, the driver's grin. She listened, but I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe me. When I mentioned the arm, how it raised itself and pressed against the glass, her expression faltered for just a second, like she was about to believe me. Then she shook her head. Someone's screwing with you. It's some kind of prank. Maybe they know your route. Maybe. But who would go through that much trouble for a random guy driving home at 3 amperes? I quit the warehouse job a week later. I told myself it was the hours, the isolation, but I knew the truth. I couldn't drive that road again. I started taking the back way to town, 40 extra minutes each way. Didn't care. But even now, years later, I still can't escape it. Because sometimes, late at night, I'll see a car in my rearview mirror, dark, boxy, old. And before I can stop myself, I check the back seat. I always check the back seat. That week after the second encounter, I was a wreck. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every sound on the road made me flinch. I kept seeing the Buick's taillights in my mind. That final image burned into my brain like an afterimage of hell. Sarah tried to help. She even drove with me once, insisting I take I-70 west during the day. We did. Sunlight made it easier to breathe. The road looked ordinary. The shoulder where I'd stopped was still there. Gravel scattered, tire marks faint in the dirt. But when we passed the spot where the Buick had stopped, she noticed something first. "Hey," she said, "look at that. On the side of the road, maybe 10 yards into the tree line, stood something pale against the dark bark. I slowed down instinctively. It was a mannequin, or what was left of one. Its head was missing, and its limbs were bent at awkward angles. Dirty white gauze clung to its torso, fluttering slightly in the wind. One arm was outstretched toward the road, hand open, like it had been waving. Sarah laughed, but her voice shook a little. Probably just some Halloween decoration someone tossed out. We didn't stop. I didn't speak. The mannequin didn't move. But as we passed, the light shifted and I could swear the fingers were too long. That night, I dreamed of the rider. It wasn't chasing me. It wasn't even moving. It was just standing on the shoulder of the highway, facing the road, waiting. The next morning, I woke up, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. I told myself it was over, that it had to be. But the human brain doesn't let go of things that don't make sense. It replays them, digs into them, searching for logic where there isn't any. I started looking online for reports, weird drivers, highway stalkers, mannequins. I found nothing, not one mention of anything like what I'd seen. No one on local forums, no news articles, nothing. It was like the rider never existed outside my own head. A few weeks passed before I dared to drive alone at night again. I stuck to back roads, kept the radio off, every shadow looking like a moving shape. The fear didn't fade, it just settled in, quieter, deeper. One night, heading home late from a friend's place, I took a route that briefly merged with I-70 West for a few miles. I told myself it was fine. It was early evening, still light out. Half a mile onto the highway, my stomach twisted. A car ahead of me in the distance, dark, old, same boxy silhouette. I slowed down, pulse spiking, trying to tell myself it wasn't the same one. Couldn't be. But then it changed lanes. And as it did, a shape in the back seat caught the light. White. Still. Wrapped. I froze. It wasn't standing this time. It was sitting, head tilted forward, as if asleep. I dropped back, heart hammering, the world shrinking to the line between my car and that one. Then, without warning, the driver turned on their blinker and took the next exit. Gone. I pulled to the shoulder and sat there until my breathing slowed, every nerve in my body screaming that I'd just seen it again. Maybe it wasn't meant for me this time. Maybe it was for someone else. That thought chilled me worse than any nightmare. Months went by, life went on, but the road never felt the same. Sometimes, when I tell people about it, they laugh. They think it's one of those late-night paranoia stories. I don't blame them. It sounds made up. But when I'm driving home late, and the highway stretches out in front of me like a black river, I always remember the moment the rider turned its head, not jerking or twitching, but turning, inch by inch, like it wanted me to see it, like it needed me to. I don't think it was random. The way the driver slowed down, the way they made sure I had a perfect view, the way they stopped in the road just to make me look inside again. It was too deliberate, too rehearsed. Someone went to great lengths to create that illusion, to stage it, to time it perfectly. But what I can't explain, what I'll never explain, is that arm, the way it rose and pressed against the glass, the way it waved. That wasn't animatronic. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was alive. Now, years later, I've moved to another town. I don't work nights anymore, but the habit never left. Every time I see a dark sedan in my rear view, my grip tightens on the wheel. My eyes drift to its back seat before I even think about it. And sometimes, in that half-second glance, I swear, I see movement, a faint shift, a shadow that straightens too perfectly, a shape that might be standing. Then I blink, and it's gone. Maybe it's just memory. Maybe it's trauma. Or maybe that driver, whoever they were, found someone new to follow. Because when you've seen something like that, you realize the truth about fear. Monsters don't always live in the woods or under your bed. Sometimes they build props. Sometimes they plan. And sometimes they wait on the side of a dark highway, just to make sure that when you see them, you'll never stop looking. This happened a few years ago when my friend Liam and I were driving back to our college in Illinois after a hiking trip in Colorado. It was past 2 a.m., and we were deep in Nebraska, on I-80 East, that long, lifeless stretch of highway, where the world feels like an empty stage. We'd been on the road for nearly 10 hours, running on cheap gas station, coffee, and pure exhaustion. The first few hours were normal bad music, road trip jokes, nothing special. But somewhere after midnight, the sky changed. One moment it was clear, the next it turned a violent shade of purple. I was behind the wheel when the first gusts hit, sudden, powerful winds that shoved the car sideways. Within minutes, Rain started pounding so hard, it blurred the entire world into gray static. Liam was half asleep beside me when I nudged him awake. "Hey man, it's getting bad. Maybe we should pull off." He blinked at the windshield and scoffed. "We're fine. It's just a storm. Keep going." So I did. But the storm quickly became a living thing. The wind screamed through the side mirrors, and thunder rolled non-stop. We hadn't seen another car for 30 minutes. It felt like we were the last people alive out there. Then I heard a single, heavy thunk on the back of the car. "Did you hear that?" I shouted. Liam looked up, annoyed. "Yeah, probably a branch or debris." "A branch? In the middle of Nebraska?" Before I could finish, a second noise slid across the roof, a long scraping drag of metal on metal. Liam tried to laugh it off, saying maybe it was a piece of tire tread I'd run over earlier. But his voice lacked conviction. The car rocked again under the wind. My hands were slick on the wheel. And then came a sound that froze both of us. A faint, deliberate tap, tap, tap on the rear passenger window. It wasn't random, it was rhythmic, precise. Liam turned toward the sound, eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know. Maybe something stuck? You're insane if you think I'm rolling that window down." The tapping stopped. Then, seconds later, started again, this time on the driver's side rear window. That was the moment every logical thought left my head. The wind couldn't cause that. Something was moving around the car. Liam tried to keep his composure. "It's just the storm, man. Wind pressure or something. The wind's coming straight at us, Liam. It can't hit both sides." I pressed harder on the gas, desperate to put distance between us and whatever was out there. But then we heard a new sound. Softer. Closer. A wet, shuffling step directly above our heads. We both looked up at the roof at the same time. Through the flickering lightning, I caught a flash of something, a dark shape crawling across the top of the windshield. Liam's voice cracked. "That's not the wind." "No," I whispered. "It's not." For the first time, I saw real fear in his face. We were in the middle of nowhere, trapped inside a tiny cart with something crawling over us. The roof creaked as it shifted its weight. Every nerve in my body screamed to stop, but I couldn't. The thought of seeing a face press against the glass was worse than anything else. "Call 911, I shouted. Liam fumbled for his phone, dropping it to the floor in panic. As he bent down, something slapped the top of the windshield. A wet, heavy thwack right above my head. I screamed and slammed the brakes. The car skidded, tires hissing across the soaked pavement. Liam crashed against the door, and my chest hit the steering wheel. For a moment, everything was silent except for the rain hammering the roof. The sounds were gone. Whatever had been on top gone. Liam was shaking. "It's off." The stop must have thrown it off. We sat there in silence, just breathing. The storm still raging outside. The only thing that kept me from losing it was the thought that maybe it had been some animal, a raccoon, maybe, or debris blown up by the wind. But deep down, I didn't believe that. After a few minutes, I started driving again. Neither of us spoke. Every time rain hit the glass, I flinched. The highway signs blurred past until I saw one that said Kearney exit 3 miles. Civilization. A single word that felt like salvation. "We're stopping," I said. Liam didn't argue. We pulled into the only gas station off the exit. An old, yellow-lit station that looked half abandoned. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. I killed the engine and took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Don't get out yet," Liam said, gripping my arm. "Check the roof first." I nodded, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the damp air. My heart was still pounding as I circled the car. Nothing. No dents, no debris, no animal. Just slick, clean metal and a few scratches that could have been from anything. "See?" I said, forcing a laugh. "It's fine, probably just..." Then I stopped talking. On the front windshield, right where the slap had landed, was a dark, oily handprint. It was huge, at least twice the size of mine. The fingers were unnaturally long, tipped with sharp, claw-like ends. And the print was clear, every ridge, every splay of the hand perfectly visible in the glow of the gas station lights. Liam got out, walked around, and froze beside me. His mouth fell open. That's not human," he whispered. We just stood there, staring at it, proof that something had been inches from our faces on that roof, leaning over us in the middle of the storm. I don't think I've ever felt fear like that before, the kind that isn't about dying, but about realizing you were never alone. We stood there in silence, rain dripping from our jackets, both staring at that impossible handprint. It wasn't smeared like mud or dirt. It looked like something oily, thick, black, and reflective under the gas station lights. The long fingers spread across half the windshield, each one ending in a tapered point, like claws. Neither of us said anything at first. The storm was dying down, thunder rolling off somewhere, far across the plains. The world felt empty again, but not peaceful, just hollow, like the calm after a scream. Liam's voice finally broke through. It was on the roof, wasn't it? I nodded slowly. Yeah, and it leaned over. It hit the glass. But how? We were going 40. How could something stay on? There wasn't an answer. I couldn't even form words. I just stared at that print and imagined whatever it was crouched above us, watching, waiting. The thought of it moving with the storm made my skin crawl. A pair of headlights pulled off the highway and rolled into the lot. It was a semi-truck, a big diesel rig with mud splattered across its grill. The driver, a huge man with gray stubble and a heavy jacket, climbed out and started pumping fuel on the far side of the station. The normalcy of it almost made me laugh with relief. Someone else was here. We weren't alone. Liam went inside to pay for gas, leaving me standing by the car. I couldn't stop staring at the windshield. The print looked almost alive. The edges seemed darker now, like whatever made it had soaked into the glass. I raised my phone, hands shaking, and took a picture. The flash caught every detail, the ridges of the palm, the sharp indentations where the tips pressed deepest. The trucker finished fueling and started walking past me. He nodded, polite, then stopped when he saw where I was looking. "You boys have a rough night?" he asked, voice gravelly. "Yeah," I said quietly. "We heard something on the roof. When we stopped, we found this." He stepped closer, squinting. For a second, I thought he was about to laugh until I saw his face change. Not fear, recognition. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You're on I-80, right? Eastbound?" "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "Platte Valley stretch. You're lucky it only hit the glass." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at me, eyes dark and serious. "There's stories out here. Been driving this road 20 years, and I've heard them from more truckers than I can count. They call it the Shadow Rider." He said the name like it was something sacred or cursed. Storms like this, that's when it comes out. Folks say it rides cars, trucks, anything moving fast enough through the rain. Likes the sound, the panic. One guy tanker driver told me he stopped once and found Claw Noahs all along his trailer door. Said he heard whispering on his roof the whole night. I felt every hair on my arms rise. "You're serious?" He nodded, staring at the handprint. "I don't joke about things that leave Noahs like that. You're lucky, son. Real lucky. Whatever that thing is, it doesn't always stop at tapping." He turned away, climbed into his cab, and started the engine. Before pulling out, he rolled down his window and called, "Don't hang around. Get back on the road. But don't stop till you see sunrise." And then he was gone, taillights fading into the wet dark. Liam came back with 2 bottles of water, pale and shaking. "What did he say?" I hesitated. He said it's something called the Shadow Rider." "Don't," Liam snapped. "Don't start with that. We're not doing the ghost story thing right now." He grabbed a squeegee from the pump and walked toward the windshield. "Wait," I said, reaching for his arm. "Don't wipe it. We need proof." "I don't care about proof," he shouted. "I just want it gone." He scrubbed the glass until the handprint vanished, water streaking down the hood. I couldn't even blame him. He wasn't just cleaning the glass, he was trying to erase what happened. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. Neither of us spoke. The highway stretched on endlessly, the storm fading into a cold drizzle. Every few minutes I caught myself glancing at the roof, half expecting to hear those taps again, but they never came. By the time the sun came up, we were back in Illinois. The world looked normal again, gas stations, billboards, early commuters. But everything felt wrong, like the storm had taken something from us and left something else in its place. When we finally parked outside our dorm, Liam just sat there, staring straight ahead. "We don't talk about this," he said quietly. "Not to anyone." I didn't argue. I couldn't, because I knew if we tried to tell it, it would sound insane, like something out of an internet horror story. And maybe that's all it was. Maybe exhaustion and a 10-hour drive played tricks on our senses. Maybe. But I still have that photo, the one I took before Liam wiped the glass. I've shown it to a few people over the years, just to see their reactions. They always go quiet. They look at the length of those fingers, the spread of the palm, the faint talon nose at the tips, and they don't know what to say. The picture's grainy and old now, taken in bad lighting through rain, but every time I look at it, my stomach knots. Because no matter how I try to rationalize it, no matter how much I tell myself it was an animal, debris, or even a prank, I can't explain the one detail that sticks with me. The handprint was leaning forward, not pressed flat, not smacked from above. It was angled as if whoever, or whatever, made it had crouched on the roof and reached down to look inside. Sometimes when I drive long stretches of highway alone, especially during summer storms, I catch myself glancing up at the roof. Not because I expect to see something, but because I remember that feeling. The weight of something alive above me, moving when I move, stopping when I stop. If you ever find yourself out there, on a dark stretch of 80 inches, the middle of a thunderstorm, and you start hearing taps on your window, don't slow down, don't pull over, just keep driving. Because whatever's out there, it's not trying to pass you. It's trying to ride with you. This final story is the most recent, and perhaps the most psychologically draining, because it involved my brother, Thomas. Thomas is the overrector of the family, the guy who jumps to conclusions, panics easily, and sees every minor incident as a catastrophe. He's a good guy, but highly emotional. It was late November, the air already frigid, and a thin, icy rain was falling. Thomas had just bought a used work van, a beat-up white cargo van, the kind electricians or plumbers drive. He needed it for a side hustle he was starting. The van was a wreck, full of strange stains, and smelled perpetually of mildew. But it ran, and it was cheap. We were driving it back from the cellar, about a 3-hour trip on a lonely stretch of State Route 43, which ran parallel to the main interstate, but was known for being almost completely deserted after dark. It was 10:30 p.m. We were an hour in, and Thomas was already second-guessing the purchase. I don't know, man. This thing feels like it's gonna seize up on us. The transmission is whining like a dying dog, he complained, his nervous energy filling the massive, empty cabin of the van. Relax, Thomas. We'll take it to a mechanic tomorrow. Just get us home, I said, trying to be the calm thinker in the situation. The van had no rear windows, just solid metal doors, which gave the whole vehicle a claustrophobic, box-like feel. The only views were the front windshield and the 2 side mirrors. About 20 minutes later, Thomas suddenly braked hard, sending us both lurching forward. "Did you see that?" he asked, eyes wide, staring at the side mirror. "See what, Thomas? A deer? You need to slow down, man." "No, I swear there was someone standing by the side of the road. Right by that old, rusted mailbox. A woman." I checked my mirror. Nothing, just the 2 receding beams of our headlights and the dark, tangled woods lining the shoulder. "Thomas, you're tired. It's late. You bought a lemon of a van and you're projecting your anxiety. You saw a shadow." "No." She was wearing white. She was just standing there, facing the woods, not looking at us. It felt wrong. He was already spiraling, his overreactor switch flipped to maximum. We drove on, but the atmosphere in the van had changed. Thomas's paranoia was contagious. The sheer size of the cargo space behind us suddenly felt less like empty storage and more like a vast, soundless void. A few minutes later, Thomas gripped the wheel tight and slowed to a crawl. "I can hear something," he whispered. "Do you hear that?" I listened intently over the drone of the engine and the squeak of the wipers. Nothing. "No, I don't hear anything, Thomas. Just the wind." "No. Listen. It's subtle. It's like a scratching noise." I finally did hear it then. A faint, repetitive sound, almost too delicate to register. It was coming from the cargo area behind the driver's seat. Chk, chk, chk. It sounded like a small animal caught back there, or maybe an old piece of equipment shifting. "See? I told you, something's in the back. That guy sold us a van with a stowaway," Thomas said, his voice rising in panic. "Okay, relax," I said, trying to be rational. "It's probably just a tool shifting around. The van is a wreck, remember? Pull over." "No, I'm not pulling over." What if it's not a tool? What if it's... Thomas trailed off, eyes darting from the side mirrors to the dark metal bulkhead behind us. He had clearly jumped from animal to homicidal stowaway in 2 seconds flat. The scratching continued, steady and unnerving. It was a mechanical, insistent noise, but it seemed to lack the rhythmic consistency of a loose engine part. Thomas sped up to 60 miles per hour, trying to outrun the noise, a common, panicked human reaction. The scratching, however, simply sped up to match our tempo. "We need to know what it is," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "It's either nothing, and we can forget it, or it's something we need to deal with now." I reached back and fumbled for the handle to the small sliding service door that connected the cab to the cargo area. It was stuck, rusted shut. "Forget it," Thomas whimpered. "Just forget it. We're almost to the next town. We'll check it there." As he said that, the scratching changed. It stopped being a continuous rhythm and became a singular, deliberate noise, followed by an abrupt, metallic thump. Then, silence. The sudden cessation of noise was worse than the scratching itself. We exchanged a terrified look. The weight of the silence pressed down on us, amplifying the emptiness of the highway and the chilling darkness of the cargo hold. What was that?" Thomas whispered. "I don't know, but whatever it was, it's bigger than a tool," I replied. A minute later, the noise returned, but this time it was lower, a kind of muffled, dry screaming sound coming from the back corner of the van. Not the sound of a human throat, but a sound of tortured, tearing material. Thomas's foot slammed on the gas. He was no longer driving, he was fleeing. The van lurched forward, straining its old engine. I pulled out my phone and started to call 911, but my finger hovered over the screen. What would I say? I hear strange noises coming from the back of my newly purchased derelict work van, and my brother is currently driving 85 miles per hour on an icy road. The fear of not being believed, of sounding like a panicked fool, was a powerful deterrent. Then, through the front speaker system, which was barely functioning, a voice cut in, replacing the static. It was a thin, high-pitched voice, a woman's voice, and it sounded like it was coming from inside the dashboard. The voice was barely audible over the wind and the groan of the old engine, but it was there, a dry, raspy whisper, like a fingernail dragging over concrete. It wasn't speaking English or any language I recognized. It was a series of quick, high-pitched utterances, almost like static arranged into a rhythmic, desperate speech. Thomas and I both flinched violently. He took his foot off the gas and the van slowed rapidly. "Did you hear that?" Thomas asked, his voice shaking uncontrollably. "Where is that coming from?" "The speakers," I said, my heart hammering. "It's coming through the speakers." "Did the radio come on?" Thomas fumbled with the ancient, sticky radio dial. It was off, completely dead. Yet the voice continued, a frantic, ghostly monologue being delivered from behind the peeling plastic of the dashboard. The thought occurred to me. The van was old. Maybe the wiring was crossed, picking up a rogue CB frequency, or a walkie-talkie signal from a truck miles away. The calm thinker in me grasped desperately for this rational explanation. But then, the voice changed. The high-pitched chattering stopped, and it was replaced by a single, distinct, terrifying sound. A drawn-out, gasping sigh. It was a wet, final sound that resonated deeply within the small cab, and it sounded like it came directly from the air vent next to my knee. Thomas didn't wait for another word. He violently swerved the van onto the gravel shoulder and slammed the gear shift into park. The van shuddered to a stop, the entire structure groaning in protest. "We're getting out," Thomas said, fumbling with his seatbelt. "Now, I don't care about the van. We're walking." "Wait," I grabbed his arm. "We can't just leave it. We need to check the back, the voice, the sounds. We have to know." My psychological arch had shifted from fear to a desperate, panicked need for certainty. The unknown was exponentially scarier than the known. I managed to jam my hand into the small gap around the stuck service door and violently wrestled the handle. With a horrible, scraping POP, the latch finally gave way. I pulled the door aside just enough to shine my phone's flashlight into the pitch-black cargo area. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty, dusty interior. The mildew smell was thick, overpowering. It was a large, windowless box, filled with nothing but old dirt, debris, and a few tattered ropes. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. No voice, no scratching, no muffled screaming. "See, Thomas?" "Nothing," I whispered, the relief making me weak. It was just a massive electrical short in your imagination. I was about to pull the sliding door shut when the beam of my flashlight caught something in the far back corner. It was a dark shape, partially obscured by shadow. "Wait," I said, my voice barely audible. I slowly directed the light closer. It wasn't a person. It wasn't a tool. It was a gift. Resting neatly on the dirty metal floor was a small, crudely wrapped package, tied with a dark, oily piece of twine. It looked like it had been placed there deliberately. We stared at it, frozen. The van's interior light was on, giving the scene a grotesque clarity. "I didn't buy that. I didn't put that there," Thomas whispered, his breath ragged. "The seller must have left it," I countered. The skeptic again, desperate for a normal explanation. "No, he cleared everything out." I watched him. "Besides, that looks brand new. And why is it in the very back, in the dark?" The silence returned, pressing down on us. The thought that whatever had been making those horrible, scratching noises and the high-pitched voice had left us something was the deepest psychological cut. It felt less like a chance occurrence and more like a deliberate transaction. Curiosity finally won the battle over fear. I stepped inside the cargo area, the dust crunching beneath my shoes. I knelt and picked up the package. It felt unnaturally cold, and the paper was coarse and damp. "Don't open it," Thomas hissed from the cab. I ignored him, my fingers fumbling with the twine. The fear of being trapped in the van with the unknown was gone. Now, I was gripped by the panic of what the unknown wanted. I tore open the paper. It was a single, small, tarnished silver picture frame. I flipped it over. Inside, beneath the cheap, cloudy glass, was an old, faded black and white photograph. It was a picture of a woman, a young woman, maybe in her 20s, with dark, intense eyes and a long, solemn face. She was standing in a field next to a rusted mailbox, wearing a light-colored, ill-fitting dress. It was the same woman Thomas had seen standing by the side of the road 20 minutes ago. But that was not the horrifying part. I turned the frame over again, looking at the silver back. Engraved crudely into the metal, as if scratched out with a key or a sharp piece of wire, were 3 words. "Thank you for the ride." I dropped the frame. It clattered on the metal floor, the thin glass cracking with a tiny, sharp sound. Thomas, who had been watching my face, screamed a raw, guttural sound of pure panic. He threw open his door and stumbled out of the van and onto the shoulder. I didn't follow. I stood paralyzed in the cargo bay, staring at the gift and the engraving. The scratching noises, the muffled screaming, the voice from the dashboard, it wasn't a random event. The woman was back there. She was alive. And she was either a psychotic hitchhiker who had somehow sealed herself in and then gotten out without our knowledge, or something far worse. I finally scrambled out of the van, slammed the passenger door shut, and ran toward Thomas. We didn't get back into the van. We stood shivering on the side of the highway for 2 hours, until a kind-hearted, if slightly bewildered, state trooper picked us up. We told him the engine died, which was a lie, but it was the only lie that sounded remotely believable. We never mentioned the woman, the voice, or the photograph. The van was later towed and parked in my garage. Neither Thomas nor I have touched it since. It sits there now, a giant, white, metallic coffin in the corner of my garage. A constant, silent reminder of that night. The true horror of the van wasn't that the woman had been inside, or that she had left a cryptic, terrifying note. It was the fact that she had been trapped. She had been screaming for help, and we had driven on, assuming it was a mechanical failure. The final gift was the crushing guilt, the psychological weight of knowing we had unknowingly imprisoned someone, and then fled, leaving a silent, haunting thank you in our wake. I check my side mirrors constantly now, terrified to see the woman in white standing by the side of the road, waiting to be picked up again. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is silent, I can swear I hear a faint, metallic chuck, 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 coming from the dark corner of the garage.